Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode. I am Pam, and as always, I have Elisa with me.
Hello.
We are chatting today about this is a big one because, one of the hardest things sometimes is like we have great nappers and then they stop. So we are chatting today about nap strikes and how to get through those great big nap strikes because sometimes they happen. Sometimes there's a few different reasons. We're going to get through that all, but have a great listen because we're going to chat all about nap strikes today. Da, da, da.
Yeah, so first, what are nap strikes? That's when your baby was previously sleeping, or toddler sometimes, was previously sleeping okay or well for naps, and now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're fighting their naps. Usually we see it at around 10, 11, 12 months when baby is getting closer to that year old, and parents will typically jump in at that point and think that their baby is ready to drop their morning nap because now they're just not sleeping for their morning nap anymore. When that may be a little premature for most babies. Most babies are not ready to drop their morning nap until closer to 14 to 18 months. And so usually at 11, 12 months, maybe even 13 months, if they go through a period where all of a sudden they're not napping anymore in the morning, that's more of a nap strike than it is the actual readiness to drop down to one nap a day.
Mm-hmm.
So with consistency and just powering through that and getting through that, most of the time you're going to see that it lasts maybe 1 to 2 weeks and then they're back on track and they're sleeping again in the morning. So try not to take that as a cue that they are genuinely ready. Now, if it's going on past that, if it's, 2 weeks and they're still really fighting that morning nap, one thing you could do first is just tweak that schedule a little bit. Maybe they need to go for their nap a little bit later than they previously were. And you can even just do a 15-minute difference and see if that works out. But you don't want to make too many changes if it's just a nap strike because that's more developmental. That's more of them just going through that phase. And if you stick it out and you remain consistent and continue putting them for that nap, then they will start to sleep again. Whereas if you drop that morning nap at that point, then they weren't really ready to drop to one nap a day. And then you can run into even more challenges with their overall sleep.
Mm-hmm. And that's that big piece is that consistency of you need to keep putting them into their sleep space. You need to still protect that, 45 minutes or hour of sleep time that they're in there. Because if they're fighting those naps and then we're like, okay, that's it, I guess we're just done. And like Lisa said, they can spiral into affecting their overall sleep. But if you're encouraging that nap time and you're still offering that nap, you're still keeping them in that space, you're going to have more success of them actually coming back and napping again versus just, wiping it away and just saying no more morning nap.
Yeah. And this also, if you have an independent sleeper already, and all of a sudden they're fighting that morning nap, that can be challenging because it just hits out of nowhere. So we're
Mm-hmm.
left thinking like, oh my gosh, what's going on? There must be something wrong. They need to sleep. And then sometimes what we can do is we can get into overcompensating. And our child who was previously napping okay and independently on their own, falling asleep on their own, now we're like, you need to sleep for this morning nap. I'm going to rock you to sleep. And that's where
Yes.
we can get into backstepping as well. And that can become a new expectation for them. So really try. I mean, it's one thing if you rock them to sleep for one day, because you just didn't know what to do and you just did it. But try not to get into that because again, that will become a new expectation for them very
Well, they're
quickly.
so smart at that age. They're like, oh, this is an option. Being rocked to sleep instead of putting myself to sleep is an option. I'm always going to pick that. So then that fight's going to get even harder now because it's not just the nap strike you're dealing with. Now you have two things. Now we have that nap strike and this new expectation of, hey, there's this option of being rocked or being fed or being laid in bed with to be able to fall asleep. I'm going to take that always.
Yeah. If you are finding it really challenging because your little one is very upset when they're going into bed and you find that it's a long period of time that you're trying that nap for, if anything, maybe just reduce the amount of time you're trying the nap for. So like if you would normally give them an hour and then call it a failed nap, maybe, reduce it to like, okay, I'm just going to do this for 40 minutes or something like that, or 30 minutes or whatever your comfort zone is there. But again, they will catch on to that very quickly. So you want this to just be something temporary and try to remain as consistent as you can. And that's going to help them get through that nap strike.
Because the big piece here is you can still offer support. You just don't want to be doing it for them, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean you're just closing the door and walking away. You're still offering them that support if they need support, if they're upset and they need support. You're just not putting them to sleep. You're not doing that extra step of getting them to sleep. That's a really big point right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it knocks us so sideways that we're like, oh my gosh, they're not sleeping. And then we start to get all those we start to spiral because that internal talk is like, they're not going to sleep. They're going to be overtired. They can't go without this nap.
Now they're going to wake up tonight. What's going to happen this afternoon? And then tomorrow we have this thing and I needed them to do this. And then now that's not going to happen. And then we just
it spirals. And then what that can create right there is for us to just not try and just be like, I'm just gonna hold you to sleep because I know you're going to sleep this way, and we can't deal with the lack of sleep. Whereas there's a very big difference with temporary lack of sleep because they're going through something developmental or they're going through a phase, a nap strike. Sometimes we are going to have failed naps in there, and that's okay because it's not something that's long term. It's just a phase that they are going to work through with our consistency. But if we backstep during that time, that's when all sleep can start to spiral. So just a little reminder that when you hear that internal talk starting to come in, know that this is most likely temporary. They're going to overcome it if you remain consistent. And if you see that it's going on for longer, shift a little bit of that schedule, just like I said, and maybe your little one just needs a tiny bit more awake time before going for that morning nap. So 15 minutes sometimes is all they need. In either direction, actually. If you're seeing that they're really tired and you're seeing signs before you would have put them down, then maybe what you do is you shift it 15 minutes earlier or 15 minutes later if you're not seeing any tired signs before that.
Now, what happens if they are striking for that second nap? Because that, once we get to that like 10, 11, 12, 13 months of the two naps, that afternoon nap is the most important one. That's the one that we really want to protect and really want to make sure that, that's the longest of the two. That's the one that is the most important. So if they're nap striking that second nap, that can come into play. So what are we doing there?
Yeah. So first, just a little note to add to that is, yes, that second nap is most important because that's the one that gets them to bedtime. So if they're only sleeping for half an hour for that second nap, then they're going to be awake for a very long period of time before bed. That's going to, cause some challenges. So if they are striking for that second nap and you find either it's taking them a really long time to fall asleep for that second nap, or they're just not sleeping at all for that second nap, again, this is not a sign necessarily that they are ready to drop down to one nap. This could just be that morning nap needs to be shortened a little bit. So if they're sleeping for 2 hours in the morning, at that age, most babies cannot do 2 hours in the morning and still sleep in the afternoon. So what we start to see is exactly that happening. So what you can do there is just reduce that morning nap a little bit. Start with, an hour and a half. And then you cap it at an hour and a half so that we're protecting that afternoon nap. This is when we see that afternoon nap strike happening most frequently is around 10, 11, 12 months when they are napping really long in the morning and then not napping in the afternoon.
Now, the other part to that second nap, or I guess once you're past that 18 months, we're down to that one afternoon nap. That can happen around that age of 2-ish, where they go through another kind of nap strike of like, ha ha ha, I'm not sleeping now for the rest of the afternoons. Ha ha ha, you're missing out on all of your break. Your one and only break time you no longer get. I am now
Yes.
straight nap. Now, again, it's going to come back to, this does not necessarily mean that they are ready to drop naps yet. At the age of 2, they can go through a little bit of that nap strike. And some families feel like, okay, that must mean that they're done with napping. Typically, we're not done with napping until about 2.5, 3 years old.
Yeah, we try to get them to as close to 3 as possible.
Yeah.
Some maybe a little later.
Yeah, some a little bit later if that night sleep and bedtime isn't effective.
Exactly.
But 2.5 to 3-ish is when we're seeing that afternoon nap no longer being needed. But it is still needed at 18 months and 2 years old. They still need that afternoon nap to help protect their overall sleep, but also to make sure that they're getting the right amount of sleep. So that extra hour and a half does add to their overall sleep and will make a difference in just everything. I mean, having a great sleeper makes such a big difference in their overall everything. But it can be tough around that age of 18 months too, if they do decide that they're not going to sleep in that afternoon. And like we said, the morning one, we still need to put them into their sleep space. They still need to be in that dark and letting that body and brain know, hey, it is still time to sleep. This is still nap time. Even if you don't sleep, it is still nap time.
Yeah. And keep your same routine, because they will overcome it if you're consistent. That's the key. Again, we don't want to go and overcompensate. Oh my goodness, you're going to go without a nap. Now I have to rock you to sleep when they were already independently sleeping, because that can backslide on you.
Yes, especially at that age too, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
There's another option. I am going to take this
Again. Yes, exactly. And again, it's not ideal for them to not be napping at all. However, there's a big difference with not having a nap for, 3-4 days of a nap strike or a week of a nap strike than there is dropping naps altogether at that age and then just not sleeping for naps anymore at all.
So yeah, and just to reiterate that, like, yeah, keeping them in that space, that is telling the brain and body that, hey, it is time to sleep. So if they're not getting that time in the afternoon, the brain body isn't getting that input of information that, hey, this is time to sleep. So the chances of that nap coming back on board are slim to none. Whereas if we're keeping them in that space, we're doing our same consistent routine, we're offering support as needed, but not putting them to sleep, that nap is going to come back on track again. They are going to start sleeping. And then now, it's going to be a rough week, no doubt about it, because without that nap, then they're absolutely miserable in the late afternoon. And then trying to get through dinner and trying to get to bedtime can be really tough. So, the idea of like popping them in the car because they're going to sleep is really appealing. But that short term, maybe week and a couple of days, maybe, and then you get the next 6 to 8 months with naps again. So it really does, like, kind of just keep our voices in your head. Stay consistent. Keep offering support. Don't put them to sleep. Stay consistent, and they will get back on track. You can use that little wheel in your head as you're going through this, and knowing that you're going to then get another, potentially year of naps even again. So it's worth it. We promise it's worth it to keep going.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, if you take them into the car once or something and they fall asleep try not to make it really late in the afternoon, but like if you just need a little bit of relief one day and you took them for a drive at, I don't know, let's say 2 o'clock or something like that, then that's okay. But again, you don't want to get into that being now the new expectation. Oh, every afternoon I go for a car ride, I fall asleep in the car. Then it's going to be harder for those naps to come back on track again, just like Pam said.
Yeah, like every few days, if you're like, okay, we just need this break, I need to get sleep on board, and you're like, okay, every third or fourth day you do a quick something like that, absolutely. But if it becomes an everyday, like Lisa said, where you try the nap for an hour and then you go for a drive, they catch on to that very, very, very quickly.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Usually, like we usually say, once you do it my kind of rule of thumb for me is once we do something like 3 times, so if we do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've tried the nap and then we've put them in the car, you're now setting this is our new routine now, essentially. And not to say that you're now stuck in that, because there's always ways to come back for sure. And of course, if you are, if you've gone through a nap strike and a couple months ago and now you're napping with them or laying with them to nap, or you're laying with them to fall asleep at bedtime again, when they used to be independent sleepers, or even if this is just they haven't been independent sleepers, that you can always reach out to Elisa and I. This is exactly what we can help you with, and get that sleep back on track again. If you're in that like, oh no, we went into survival mode, we had to get sleep on board, and now we've been driving around for the last 3 weeks, that's all stuff that we can help with.
Absolutely. No judgment from us. We know how hard parenting is. We know sometimes we just get into survival, but also sometimes you just need that support from somebody who has been through this with other families and has that experience to just help keep you on track. And our programs may be covered under your benefits through social worker if you live in Ontario. So take advantage of that. Reach out to us. Get our support.
Yeah, let's get sleep back on track, because it's hard when we focus so much on sleep. And I did, like, of course I did. My children were, sleepers. I loved it. I worked very hard for it. So I can totally understand that stress when they aren't sleeping, because we've all been through that. And knowing that you can get that support to get back on track, you're not stuck. This isn't going to be your forever. Like, we can absolutely take you from where you're at and get you to where you want to be in, like Lisa said, non-mental. Like, hey, we've all go into survival mode. This is what parenting is. But that a quick email, info@restfulparenting.com, and we're here to help.
A quick little tip about 2-year-olds, let's say, and the nap strikes. Sometimes just shifting your words, depending on how their level of understanding is, shifting those words. Okay, you don't have to sleep, but you do need to have a quiet time, can really change their minds about what they are doing, because giving them that choice can empower them. And then 9 times out of 10, they go into their bed with that choice of, okay, I don't have to sleep, but I do have to go into my bed. 2 might be a bit young to start giving this choice, but again, there are some 2-year-olds that are, speaking in sentences and that can really understand. So judge what your 2-year-old is like and go from there with, whether you give them that choice or not. But the choice is that you can sleep or you don't have to sleep, but you still have to go into your bed.
Yeah, and you can lay quietly in your bed, and then when nap time is over, then we'll get you out of bed, or quiet time. But yeah, and that reframing it, I love this tip, because reframing it for us as well, really takes away that stress of and that pressure of you have to go sleep, and you're fighting them to go to sleep, when you're like, hey, sleep, don't sleep, you still have this quiet time, and then it takes that pressure off of both of you guys, really, and it can make a difference in that settling more often than not, like Lisa said.
100%. Yeah, that's a really good point. It does take the pressure off of us as well. When we come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is a nap strike, they're going to get back on track. Sleep, don't sleep, that's okay. We're going to get back on track here.
Yeah. We're still having that quiet time. The brain and body are in the dark. They have the sound machine. They are knowing that it's still this quiet downtime. So it will come back on track if you keep at it and you're nice and consistent. And that's just the general overall rule, is that consistency of it. If you're offering them that nap every day, they will start sleeping again.
Thanks very much for joining us today on this episode of Nap Strikes.
Yes, be sure to check out restfulparenting.com. There's all the information there about our programs. Reach out anytime you guys want. Info@restfulparenting.com. We're always here. Thanks, guys.
Bye.